Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It's Monday, the 19th September, a very momentous day here in the UK and throughout the world as well, because we just witnessed a very moving tribute to Her Majesty the Queen, Elizabeth II.
Some people out around the world might think we overdo it, but I was so proud of to be British and the way they handle that. And I think we do pomp and symphonies like that. We do it so well, and it was amazing day. Maybe it might have gone on a bit long for some people, but the crowds lining everywhere. Yeah, I thought they. Brilliant.
Yeah, I did as well. I don't think you can use the word highlights reel for a funeral, but I would like to see a condensed version of what happened.
I'm sure there'll be many on the television, and I think I think we all sort of forgot what a magnificent queen she was. We all took her for granted for so long, and I think that's what a lot of people wanted to go out and be in the streets because it's been the most amazing 70 years. And when you think what we came out of World War II when she, was crowned queen. We've gone right through, so much since then. I thought they did it really well, and I was very proud to have the Union flag.
Yeah, me too. And for those that aren't into the Queen, that's fine. Yep. But we respect everybody's opinion on him.
Each their own. Always each their own.
And in terms of motor racing, there wasn't that much going on. Of course, there's no Formula One. They've got a 3-week break, but there's MotoGP.
Exciting stuff we'll talk about later.
It was exciting, really good. Both Tiff and I were racing our own little fun racing worlds, which we'll come on to as well. There was Moto2, Moto3. What else was there? There was NASCAR.
Always NASCAR.
Yeah,
plenty of drama in NASCAR. We keep on highlighting it.
But I think, Tiff, before we go on, what I want to do is talk about Formula One. We mentioned this last week. We're going to go through each team and discuss the lineup, because there's just a ridiculous this whole Colton Herta thing that's been going on about the super license.
Yeah,
he's won 7 IndyCars races. He's a brilliant driver. Clearly, he's one of the world's best drivers, and he's not allowed to race in Formula One.
I mean, bless him. He's come out this week and said, I didn't want to be a special case. I want the rules to be written better. Which is correct. That must happen. They must put more points to IndyCar. But to be robbed of a chance like that, it's pretty tough to take. It's not because he was buying in with millions. It's one. AlphaTauri wanted him. They wanted him. He might not even be debated to be the best, American driver. Newgarden, maybe even better. So there's a couple of other American drivers, and we'll talk about one that's in Formula 2 later when we look at who might take the seats available. And look, we ought to look at first, though, who doesn't deserve their seats, maybe. But yes, there's a little bit of, I don't really know, I'm not behind the scenes, but you get the feeling that the FIA and F1 is a bit of a, you may own Formula One liberty, but you're not going to tell us, how to run our races. And you're not going to tell us we have to have Andretti's and Americans. And that's it. Weird bit of pushback to America going on at the moment, which I think has got to have a bit of a backroom theme going to it, to say we only need 20 cars, we don't need Andretti, and then to sort of say we don't need Colton Herta because he hasn't got enough points, and we're not going to change the rules just for him. Even though, I think on that sort of rule, there should be a force majeure. There should be some sort of common sense. But anyway, they didn't dare.
I think I said Colin Herta. I'm so sorry, Colton Herta.
Yeah, Colton.
Of course I know your name's Colton Herta. But it's something's got to happen, because that's just ridiculous. They've got to rewrite that rule. But in terms of the teams for next year, confirmed that there's some obvious ones.
Yeah.
Mercedes-Benz, Lewis.
There are some places opening up. And we just looked through the teams. Obviously Red Bull, Max Verstappen's just had a magnificent season. But Checo, Perez, and
he shouldn't stay. He shouldn't be there. In my very humble opinion.
Well, I agree, but who are they going to put in? It's like Max destroys whoever they put beside him. It needs a young gun.
It's a team, and you need your teammate to help you with the strategy. Well, Max doesn't, but you should have your team to help you with the strategy. You should have that 1-2 or somebody that.
Well, maybe Yuki had done a bit better. He could have been promoted. They've just right at this moment, Red Bull haven't got anyone else that's mercurial talent. We'll come to that a bit later, because I've got a list of the Red Bull Academy: Iwasa and Lawson and Hauger and Daruvalla. But no, so Checo will have to stay and try and go a bit quicker, Checo.
Okay, well, he's penned in to do an extension until 2024. Max is got a contract until 2028. So I think they want Max to stay at Red Bull. Not that a contract means much, but these days. But Lewis and George, they're both signed up until, I think George some sort of special deal, but they're signed up for another year as well.
That's the best pairing. I mean, they are the team with two number ones, really. I mean, George maybe got a little bit to learn still, but in speed and stamina and effort, I think that's a great pairing.
Yeah, but
Ferrari, of course, are still second in the. I was going to go through manufacturer's order.
Yeah,
we should have gone Ferrari.
Let me just mention George, because of all the races he's finished, he didn't finish Silverstone, but all the races he's finished in the top 5. That is what you want from your. So Ferrari, yep. So both the boys have signed until the end of 2024. Again, it's a funny pairing because Charles is a lot stronger, but Carlos seems to sort of have the pace once in a while, but he's a little bit more erratic.
But I always point out that Lando really was quicker than Carlos when they were together. So, I don't think Carlos is a brilliant. I think Carlos is maybe slightly better than Perez, and sort of will be in there for another year. He's doing a solid job, probably doing a slightly better job than Checo. So we'll give Carlos the sort of, we ought to be scoring him out of 10. So Max is a 10, I haven't actually written these scores, but say Max is a 10, Checo's a 7, and
no, he's not
Charles
a 7.
He's
a 6.5.
All right. Charles is a 9 and Carlos maybe an 8, Then we go down to Mercedes where they're both 9s or even 10s. But when we give Lewis a 10 and George a 9. And then fourth at the moment, of course, it was a big drop. The battle for fourth is Alpine. And there, of course, you've got the first team in a bit of a conundrum for next year as Mr. Alonso has decided there's a lot more money down the road at Aston Martin. I think he might regret yet again moving to another team because I can't see Aston catching up that much.
So who's going to join Esteban Ocon?
Well, we'll come. I've got the sort of names. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
So that is one space we'll discuss when we come back. Okay. Ocon, I still don't know about Ocon. I still don't know whether he's a 7 or an 8 or a 9. I really don't. He has moments. So against Fernando, this maybe he's sort of held on. He's only sort of a 10th behind. If Alonso out qualifies him, it's only a 10th. He's close to Fernando. I'm giving an 8 out of 10 for.
But it's not about one qualifying lap, is it? Let's be fair, Tiff. It's about racing and
he races well. He races well. I think he's an Alpine of the French team.
I'm not against him at all. No, not at all. And like
but he will have a new teammate, which will be interesting next year to see how that works out. McLaren, of course, we've got Lando. He's a 9 to me, Lando. I think he's got all the tricks. If he ever got into a Ferrari or a Red Bull or a Mercedes this week, or if they get the McLaren going. It just worries me that McLaren won't ever quite be on that pace, and that Lando won't. However long, I don't know how long he's contracted to stay at McLaren, but he just needs.
He's there until the end of 2025, and I'm with you. It would be lovely for him to have a shot.
Why Red Bull could maybe look at that. There's always a contract that can be bought out. Lando supporting Max. What a powerhouse that would be.
But it'd be a clever thing to do for the PR guys as well, because there's a huge British contingency that would support Red Bull, because at the moment it's all a bit, it's Red Bull because they've gone off Christian Horner a little bit and also Max a little bit.
There's been a bad patch between the British fans and the Dutch fans still have a go on Twitter. I had to unfollow another one that was just obsessed with me being a racist, supremist, white living, even though I don't know what he was on about, but Gordon Bennett, there are times.
Online is the most bizarre place to hang out, isn't it? Sometimes it's lovely.
I've only ever unfollowed 2. I've only ever deleted 2. They just bang on with this constant attack. But when I point out we're now praising Max, is you have to now. Well, you have to now. Oh yeah, but you called him arrogant 3 years ago. Well, he was arrogant 3 years ago.
He was unbelievably arrogant. He's found himself. He's matured so much this year, and I think because that pressure's just been taken off, because he hasn't really been, other than the first couple of races with Ferrari and Charles.
So if you're listening, whatever code name you're under, you know who you are. Back off. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
So how do you think Lando's going to fare against Oscar Piastri? Because, of course, he had an amazing outing last week at Monza.
I don't know how much testing they've given Piastri. He's had the Alpine testing, hasn't he? So he's had quite a bit of mileage in a year-old Grand Prix car. It's so hard to tell. because you haven't seen him race for a year, you sort of forget how good he was in Formula 2. And I can't remember the battles he had in Formula 2 or who he was battling with. But I know he dominated the championship. But he's going to be 0.3 off, Lando. I can't see him just coming straight in and being that close to Lando in the first year. But I wish him well.
You know what? This is the most bizarre thing. I just Googled it. Lando is 5 years younger than Oscar Piastri. He looks the same age or older even. But
well, how old do you think Piastri is?
He's 27.
No, you've got Nick de Vries mixed up somewhere.
Oh yeah, I have
surely.
got Nick de Vries mixed up. I'll find out. You keep talking.
Yeah, we'll keep talking. I've got No, he's about 21. He's about 18 or 12. I don't know. He's very young. So that's McLaren. Alfa Romeo. And there's a team, I don't know, with their Ferrari engine. And the trouble is, Valtteri Bottas is an 8.
How was Valtteri Bottas an 8? How is that possible? How are you scoring this? Are you scoring it against me? Are you saying that I'm the 0 and Max is the 10?
No, he's solid, Valtteri. He's solid. But, can you imagine that
he's
Alpha?
Not Tiff. He's never an 8. Look what he did for Mercedes. He's never
7.
Ever
That's 7. Are you happy yet?
6.
But if I was running Alfa Romeo, I'd be looking for a hot shot because I think Valtteri's making Zhao look good. Guan Yu Zhao, to me, is not much better than Latifi. I think that Alpha with that Ferrari engine, it might be a rocket ship. But if you can make that Alpha go 0.3 or 0.4 quicker, if someone could be bothered to look at all the qualifying and see how many more places up Alpha might be. Valtteri's on top of my 200 Grand Prix and you haven't been a world champion, you quit. That's my basic rule.
And
once you get to 200 Grand Prix.
For 5 years as well.
Yeah, so that's an Alpha. Zhao, as I said, I think he's more of a Latifi than a superstar, but he's obviously going to enjoy. He'll be in for another year. And there's obviously some Chinese backing. Nobody ever tells you how much money's changing hands. But there must be some Chinese backing, I would have thought. But again, it's when we get to over the page, who is there to take those places?
Colton
Herta,
maybe?
Colton, maybe.
Oh, by the way, Oscar Piastri is 21, so I think there'll be a lovely bromance there with...
How old's little Lando now?
22, 21, 22.
Okay.
Do you think there'll be a bromance? Do you think because Daniel and Lando
I think
a bromance?
Yeah, Oscar, they're
both and Lando.
They're both British and Commonwealth drivers. Unless he's wants to leave the Commonwealth, I don't know. Piastri's political views. And a Haas, has K-Mag actually been confirmed for another year or not? A Haas, I'm not sure he's actually definitely in, is he?
Yeah, I think it's official, isn't it? It is.
Is it? They have, but Mik,
yes,
the other big thing of Mik Schumacher is still. He's had a good second half of the season, Mik, and he's got closer to K-Mag than the beginning of his first half of the year. But I think he's. I think he's had enough of a chance.
He's done very well the last few races, though,
year.
Hasn't he? He's done very well. He's kind of redeemed himself a little bit. Just when it's contract talk, he's come up with the goods.
Okay, well, you're going to give him another year then?
No,
okay.
but this is the question. This is the the £1 million question. Who do you get in instead of him? Yeah, who is there?
I have on my next page. I have the candidates for you.
Okay, great.
That's Haas. We don't know. AlphaTauri then. So does Gasly stay or does Gasly go? So that's something we can't decide until we know what to have. Because the funny thing is, whereas Christian Horner said it's only Herta or nobody else to go, and otherwise Gasly can't leave. Helmut Marko is now talking up de Vries. So we'll come to that later. But de Vries, of course, is a Mercedes contracted reserve driver. But we'll come to that. So obviously there's a place there. That's the big key to all the moves, is whether Gasly's allowed to go to Alpine or not. Gasly, I still think, I don't know, he's had such a disappointing year this year. When you think how good when he first got demoted to AlphaTauri, didn't he? He was right up there in qualifying 5th, wasn't he? And mixing it with them. I think he was sort of ahead of whoever was I think he was ahead of Perez sometimes, wasn't he, in the AlphaTauri. I still think Gasly is a sort of an 8 or a 9 even, but I think he's just been a bit held back. Oh, not you. Again, you're harsh on your point scoring, aren't you?
How can you give Lewis Hamilton a 9 and Gasly a 9, an 8?
I gave Lewis a 10. 10.
All right. It's just that they're not on the same level. I mean, even with the same car or different.
Well, I don't know. I think Gasly might have some.
Let's be fair. They're all 10s, really. They're all exceptional, unbelievable drivers. But we can afford to be a little bit critical because it's our little podcast, and we can. But they're all unbelievable drivers. But
Yuki's a bit of a Mik Schumacher. Yuki, I don't know Yuki. I mean, again, there's obviously the Japanese money, the Honda.
Yeah, for the money, it's the Wonga.
But he's been almost out qualifying Gasly, I think, more often than not. Although with all these grid penalties, Yuki, I think, got through to the final to Q3, didn't he, at Monza? They didn't let him out the pit, so you don't really know how well he could have done because you're going to be at the back of the grid anyway. I think Yuki's just about deserved another year. And he always makes these silly mistakes in FP1 or FP2. He's often found off the road. Yuki's off somewhere, and getting back on the track. And yet he seems to race really well. He gets his head down in the races. So I'm voting AlphaTauri keep Yuki, but then if Yuki and they get another rookie in, then AlphaTauri bit. Anyway, we'll get to that.
Well, why doesn't Max Verstappen go and drive for AlphaTauri? He'll still win anyway.
No, yeah.
And there you go, Red Bull.
But it is funny the difference between those two teams, because everyone used to accuse AlphaTauri, 3 or 4 years ago of copying Red Bull. Well, you've got the Red Bull designer in the Red Bull team. You've got Adrian Newey helping AlphaTauri. The difference this year, same engine between, a Red Bull and AlphaTauri is massive, which is rather strange. You would have thought they would have helped out their sister team with some tips of how to make the car go around corners better.
Something, just, a few tenths or something.
No.
Just to beat the others. And then, just so they're ahead of Mercedes and not maybe at the level of Ferrari, because Ferrari, if they had the right drivers, would be competing against Red Bull.
Yeah.
But
Aston Martin.
Yeah.
I mean, dear oh dear, where are they? They're 9th in the manufacturers and 13th and 18th in the drivers' table at the moment.
No wonder Vettel said he's had enough.
Oh no! And of course, they've brought in another ex-world champion that will obviously be faster than Lance. For goodness' sake, Aston, bring in another young kid from Formula 2 and then check Lance out to see if he's any good enough. Because it's easy now. Because, well, of course I'm slower than Vettel. Of course I'm slow. They're world champions. I mean, Daddy's got to kick him out at some stage, or the shareholders, or someone else.
Why should he? It's his father's team. Why should he be kicked out? Good for him.
For the good of the sport.
He's living the dream. No, he's living the dream. There's plenty. We're going to discuss it now. There's plenty of space for these young up-and-coming rookies.
So how many years has Lance Stroll been in Formula 1? He must be getting up to 200 Grand Prix himself.
Yeah, but it's not him. I mean, he's turned into a very good driver. I'm not saying he's the best by any stretch of imagination.
He's a 6. He's a 6.
All right. But Aston Martin are pretty awful. Let's be fair.
We've no idea.
Well,
Seb was having a bit. Seb occasionally qualified well, raced quite well, but maybe wasn't trying. He wasn't giving it his all. Let's face it. He already had retirement in his brain. I mean, Seb was already down to a 7 or an 8 this season because he wasn't going for it. That's the great thing about Alonso. Alonso almost remains a 10.
Yeah.
The effort he puts in, whoever he's driving for. But I think he's going to have yet another disappointment, apart from his bank balance, of course, when he drives at Aston Martin next year. Because they were getting the Alpine. The Alpine's been, knocking on the door, but it's, it's 4th in the manufacturers now. It's interesting to see they've actually got a new floor. And they've actually said, poor old drivers expected this, we're going to have a massive increase in downforce. They've got a new floor. I've never seen a team quite so gung-ho describing what the new floor is going to do to their car. And then running around at the back, we've got poor little Williams. I don't think Mercedes isn't the best engine this year. So I think maybe, who's got Mercedes? McLaren, I think maybe a dropping behind Alpine. I think the Mercedes engine is good. Aston Martin, of course, Mercedes and Williams are 2 bottom teams, both Mercedes engines, and maybe Mercedes is up to the Ferrari and Red Bull power. But obviously Williams is great. I mean, Alexander Albon, it's been fantastic to see him back and doing so well. And then this Nick de Vries story, which leads us on to who's going to take the seats for next year. But Albon's a good 8. I think he's a really good driver, better than these. He probably did the best. He was probably the best Max Verstappen teammate. Again, he didn't qualify that well. He raced really well. There's 2 races he could have won in Brazil and Austria, when Lewis put him out both times. So I'm a big fan of Alexander Albon, even though he's now gone as Thai flag. He's a Thai flag. He's a Thai man. So next year. So this is the thing about next year. So it starts with it's always the academy drivers. And I get annoyed when they sponsor academy drivers, and then dive off and get Nico Hülkenberg because he's experienced. I'm a big Nico Hülkenberg fan, or even Ricardo. Well, let's have Ricardo back because he's experienced. And yet Nick de Vries has come in, and everyone said, "What a fantastic job!" But he's not experienced. He's a kid that we all knew had the talent. He was an 7 years ago, but he never got into a Grand Prix team because they all said, "Well, we need an experienced driver." And it's maddening to me. I mean, the point is about 30 or 40 years ago, or when I got my Grand Prix debut, you got in because someone was injured. But of course, it's so safe now. Obviously, remember Grosjean, no, it's not fully safe for those who then say, "I want people to die." So because people don't break their ankles or break their wrists in shunts anymore, these opportunities. So now you have to wait for a driver to get appendicitis instead, or you have to wait to get ill or COVID or something. You now get your break into Formula One, the reserve drivers. So he was lucky. He'd done FP1 in the Aston Martin one. Who did the FP1 in? Maybe Aston, I think it was. Anyway, so you had done Monza, the Grand Prix car the day before, but it was a fantastic drive. So why don't teams say, well, why do we have to get an experienced driver that will cost us 23 million or 50 million pounds when we can get him for nothing that can do the same job? I bang my head against the wall with this. They keep on saying we have to experience drive, and then they keep on saying, "Oh wow, look at Nick de Vries."
Yeah,
because you go to Red Bull with this. We go back to Alpha. So say there is an AlphaTauri seat. So Red Bull have got these 4 Formula 2 drivers. So they got Iwasa, the Japanese kid, who's gone quick in the second half of the season, but he's 9th in the points because he didn't have a first half. I've got Liam Lawson. Now, Liam Lawson was the one I did think. He went to DTM in a Ferrari for Red Bull, had a year out because he was 5th in Formula 3 the year before. But he's only 7th in the F2, hasn't had a good season there. He would have been a really obvious
I thought you liked Jack Doohan, his Aussie counterpart.
He's Alpine. Will you wait?
Okay,
we're doing Red Bull, right?
Okay,
we're going through the academies to see the team should be picking their academy drivers.
Okay.
So we've now got Marco talking about taking a Mercedes academy driver, Nick de Vries, and putting him in the AlphaTauri. Which is because then the 4 Red Bull boys are thinking, well, us, hands up. So Liam Lawson was the one I thought would go in there. But then Dennis Hauger, the Dane, he's Formula 3 champion, 11th F2. Then you got Daruvara, the Indian guy that's done 3 years F3 with 3 years at F2, and he's only 6th in the championship. So to be honest, they haven't got a real. I think Iwasa could be in the other year's time, or Liam Lawson. But I understand Red Bull not wanting to break one of their academy drivers, even though I still think they should put Liam Lawson in. They won't, because they'll pinch someone else's protege. So Alpine, they've got Jack Doohan. And also Ollie Coolman in Formula 2. They've got 2 Formula 2 drivers. Ollie's had a terrible time, the British driver. He's 21st in the Formula 2. I can't see them putting him in. But this is where I really believe Jack Doohan. So he's an Alpine Academy driver that's been on pole for 3 or 4, run 2, 3 Formula 2 races. He's got the pace.
Yep.
Well, put him in. Because who else are Alpine going to put him? Alpine, they're all looking at Nick de Vries now because they're all amazed. Gosh, what a good job he did. Well, yes, we all knew he could do it. There's a Sauber Academy. They've got Théo Pourchaire, this other young French kid that looked really good but had a bad season F2. Well, he's 2nd in the championship.
He's 2nd in the championship, really well. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but he's tailed off right when you want to be on pole and doing so well. But he's a Sauber Alpha, so he could go in instead of Zhao, except Zhao's being Chinese money. He could go in instead of Bottas, as far as I'm concerned. But he's stuck with Sauber. So then you've got Ferrari, have got their academy. This is the interesting one with Haas, and maybe because Schumacher's also the Ferrari Academy books. But it's Robert Schwartzman, who's unfortunately Russian, who had to become Israeli to get his racing license this year. But he hasn't done much racing. He's just been doing. He's going to be doing FP1s, I think, in 2 of the next Grand Prix. So we're going to see Schwartzman, who was he was 2nd in the F2 in 2021. No, can't have been. Yes, last year he was 2nd in the championship. So there, Ferrari ought to give him a chance. Mik's had his chance. You can bring Mik back after a year if Schwartzman's worse than Mik, sort of thing. Why don't they give these kids 2 years and then give another kid 2 years or something? So I'll be very keen to see Robert Schwartzman have a crack.
Okay. So
Nick de Vries is everywhere, and now mainly AlphaTauri looking, but of course could go to Williams, who have a Mercedes engine. So Williams is quite an obvious second choice for de Vries. I'm sure he'd prefer to go to to Alpine or AlphaTauri or anywhere else. But the interesting thing with Williams is this Logan Sargent, American kid. So here we've got an American kid with, I think he's got to finish, I think he's like 5th in the F3 championship.
Fourth in F2.
F2, I mean.
Yeah.
And he has to keep the 4th place with 1 round left. And this is why I was going crazy about the stupid Formula 2 calendar. So F3 finished at Monza. F2, the champion, was decided at Monza. They've now got to wait 6 weeks to Abu Dhabi. Right in November, December, when you're negotiating contracts, trying to get your deal for next year. And so Logan's got to wait until Abu Dhabi to make sure he finishes 4th in the Formula 2 Championship, to make sure he gets 2 more points to get a super license. So why drag the F2 on until then? Adding to the budget, the F2 teams all going to go out to Abu Dhabi with the costs of it. They don't do these calendars with any brains in their heads sometimes, do they?
Well, it's all for the entertainment, isn't it? Abu Dhabi, it's the big one, isn't it, for Formula 1? Well,
so say we lose 4 drivers. Say we lose Ricciardo, Vettel, Latifi and Schumacher, right? So that's 4 out. So we've got Oscar coming in, Piastri's 1 in. So we've got 3 more who could make their debut. Well, Gasly, of course, maybe go to Alpine. So if Gasly goes to Alpine, who goes to AlphaTauri or Williams or Haas? So I'm going to put Schwartzman in Haas. I'm going to put Sargent in the Williams and De Vries in the AlphaTauri.
Okay. Can we kick?
You heard it here.
Can we kick Bottas out as well and put someone in Alfa Romeo? No. Okay.
I'd be with you on that, but we can't. So he's experienced. They didn't experience. He's so flippant experienced. You wouldn't believe it.
Nick De Vries just proved, the 27-year-old, not Oscar Piastri, who's 21, by the way. And you're right, I did mix them up. But he's proved that you can come in and do it. And he did it.
And to our Dutch fans, please notice we're promoting another Dutch driver, Nick De Vries.
Max Verstappen, we can't speak more highly of how good.
That's because we have to now. I was told we're only doing that now because he's dominating Formula 1.
And you know what? It's nice to see him. He's humble now, and apparently everyone that meets him says he's really nice. But he's good. But he came.
Well, I've met him. I interviewed him at the Monaco Classic. I had a chat with him. He's lovely.
An arrogant, spoilt little brat. Those first few.
Steady on that. Steady on.
He was. That's how he came across to me.
And his overtaking manoeuvres when he didn't have the best car were pretty outrageous.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute at Knockhill. Actually, I got a few people I want to call out.
Oh no, not the Caterham bashing again. Let's quickly move on. We'll let you have your soapbox at the end of the show. So anyway, interesting stuff. Let us know down below comments. If you go to the YouTube channel, I always like it. We have the YouTube channel live, so you can put comments on. Let me know what you think. What have I said now? Alpine gets Gasly, AlphaTauri, De Vries, Williams, Sargent, Haas, Schwartzman. Got it. Meanwhile, last weekend, MotoGP drama. I mean, the MotoGP season is building up to this amazing crunch because Ducati and Bagnaia, Francesco, thought they'd blown it. He fell off 3 races on the trot, was all over. Reigning champion Quartararo was roaring ahead in the point situation. And slowly but surely, Bagnaia has been closing that gap. But it closed big time down at Aragon because Marc Marquez returned. And we all want mercurial Marc Marquez back on his Honda since his operation to try and make his arm, because he can't have his elbow on the track at 300 miles an hour and use the throttle at the same time. I mean, the things they do on those bikes are just outrageous. However, he had rather a big impact on the championship because he qualified 13th, but it's just such a race. He got to 6th through the first 2 corners. They go round a right hand, he got the back stepped out on him, so he had to shut the throttle. And Fabio Quartararo, who had a bad start, was right behind Marquez. And when he had to tap off to hold the slide, Quartararo just went straight into the back of him. I mean, a horrendous shunt. He's burnt all his chest where he slid down the road because the heat builds up. But they slide. It always looks a bit of fun, doesn't it, when they're sliding down tarmac? What's happening? The heat is building up with the friction. He was so lucky not to get hit by anyone else as well. So Quartararo was out on the first lap. And about 3 corners later, Marc Marquez, now a bit worried about his something was rubbing because it damaged the back of his bike. Was sort of, I think he was trying to sort of edge off the road to get out of the way, and probably collided with poor old the Japanese Takahaki Nakagami, and took him out as well. So he took out 2 riders on the opening lap, and Marc retired. So that was 3 riders out in the opening lap. And actually, to rub salt in the wound, Quartararo, when he was they jump on the back of a moped, I don't think he'd take him back to the paddock. He had a head-on crash with a moped coming the other way and got stuck. Yeah, fell off the bloody moped. He had 2 crashes before he managed to get back to the garage to worry about his championship lead dwindling. But then the amazing out front, again, it was a sort of Ducati again, with first, second, and third on the grid. And it was Bagnaia led from Miller early on. But all the while behind him, there was this Bastianini from Grassini, who won 3 races right at the beginning of the season. He won 3 all rounds. He was leading the championship early on. But he was tracking them down, and Jack Miller dropped back, and Bastianini caught up Bagnaia. But now he's a satellite Ducati. So you think there'd be team orders because he's caught up the race leader who's now trying to track down the championship at the end of the season. But of course, Bagnaia, he's Bagnaia and Bastianini, they're driving mad, all these Italian names. Of course, he's got a chance of winning the championship as well. So he was a hell of a lot, caught him up, overtook on the last lap to take the win. So it's a Ducati 1-2. So Bastianini's 4th in the championship. Bagnaia's 2nd, now just 10 points away from Quartararo. And Alex Espargaro, I'm not very good at all these foreign names, I apologise to the bike fans. He's 3rd, he finished 3rd in his Aprilia, and he's 3rd in the championship. He's not out of it either. So it's Yamaha up front, then a Ducati, and then a Aprilia, and then a satellite Ducati.
You're better with the names than me. And quite interestingly, though, Bagnaia is 10 points behind Quartararo, as you just said. Yeah. They've both been on the podium 7 times, but Bagnaia's had 6 wins, and Quartararo's only had 3 wins. So I think there's just maybe a bit more consistency there, and more finishes perhaps. But it's tight at the top. But it's between those 3, really, isn't it? I would say.
Of course, I think Bastianini, he's got the factory ride next year. So he won't have a very friendly teammate if he loses the championship, because Jack Miller's off to KTM, taking Remy Gardner's place. Quite a bit of saddle swapping. Do you call it seat swapping or saddle swapping in bikes? Because we've got Suzuki are leaving next year, so we're losing Suzuki, so we're losing, some factory bikes. Jack Miller's going to KTM. Because it's great to see Cal Crutchlow back. We always say we've got no British MotoGP riders. He took the seat of who was it? Dovizioso, who was retired. Andrea Dovizioso. So he was in for his satellite Yamaha, qualified 19th and finished 14th. It was actually the first Yamaha to finish, because Quartararo obviously was out, and he was ahead of the other 2 Yamahas. So really solid. It's first race for a year, Cal. I mean, Cal's so much, he does tests for the team, I think. He's a Yamaha test driver. So it was great to see a British rider out there again and finishing and doing a good job. Moto2, a British rider, we hope might get to MotoGP. Jake Diskin qualified 3rd, but fell back to 6th and then fell off on the last lap. Jake's another wonderful character. And whether he's I can't see him getting it. We won't get a MotoGP ride next year, so he'll have to do another season of Moto2. It was a dominant win by Pedro Costa, our little favourite Moto3 rider. He's back on form. It was a shame he broke his leg, didn't he, doing quad biking or something, mucking about off-road in the middle of the season. So I think Acosta will be the dominant man in Moto3 next year, I'd imagine. Our 3 bits of Moto3, John McPhee qualified 4th, but finished 10th, dropped back. Whereas our Vision track, these 2 young British kids that the team's bringing into Moto3, had a quiet weekend. Scott Ogden qualified 23rd, finished 22nd. So he was qualifying like 15th earlier on. We thought Ogden might get into top 10 even. He's faded a bit in the second half of the season. His teammate Joshua Watley had his best qualifying 26th. But he and this Spanish girl was out. She had an all-female team in the garage as well. So it's the first Moto3 with an all-female team. And she qualified 27th, right behind Joshua Wheatley. But they were both taken out of the first corner by a Frenchman, Lorenzo. I guess you like the name, you like the joke coming up here. Lorenzo fell on. He fell on them. He fell on. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's spelled Fellon. Fellon. Anyway, the Fellon took them both out. Although Anna actually got up. She got up again and finished 25th. So
well, wasn't it in Moto 3 as well that I saw the most bizarre thing in the pits?
Yes.
The quarter Q2 of the pits. It was I think it's Max Biaggi, his team.
No, was it Biaggi's? I don't know, it's Biaggi the team owner.
Yeah, and it was his team.
It's a championship leader. It was a championship leading kid.
If you didn't see it, two of his team went over to try and almost stop or hinder the bike moving. It was the most bizarre thing.
Wait, is that Biaggi's team you're accusing? I'm not. Oh, was it? I didn't know which team.
Biaggi's team,
two opposition mechanics.
Yeah.
Because it's like Formula One, but they'll go out. They want to go out with the track strike or go out to catch a slipstreaming bunch. Yeah, literally, those two opposition team members went over to the bike and then just literally held him back from riding out to qualify.
Fernandez, that was.
Yeah, he was the championship leader, I think, isn't he? I think he's right up there.
No, I mean, he's mid-pack actually, but still, it doesn't matter. He's
bizarre.
He is. He's
Google quicker next
time. He's mid-pack. He's 19th.
No,
he is. Fernandez 19th.
What website are you on?
MotoGP.
Who's leading the Moto 3 championship then?
Adrian Fernandez has got 40 points for KTM, and Aizan Guavarara is winning with 229. Sergio Garcia 196. This is Moto 3.
Have we got the right name of the rider that was accosted?
Yeah, it was Fernandez.
I thought he was one of the championship leaders. Anyway,
whatever. Don't question my stats. I've got Mr. Google in front of me.
But can you imagine the Mercedes mechanics standing in front of the Red Bull garage to stop Max? I mean, that's what they did. They physically tried to stop him going out to qualify.
But then, bizarrely, fair play to the mechanic, because he's like, look, guys, you get lost. And then one of the other guys came over a little bit confrontational. It's like, whoa, this is bizarre. This really bizarre thing. So Moto 3, it's
wonderfully entertaining day of motorsport. Although I was catching it up on times 30 and catch up. So NASCAR last night. It was always NASCAR. It was actually midnight. It was the night race and the Bristol half-mile oval, and they produced the 19th different winner.
Wow!
You talk about how many winners won Formula One this year? 2 or was it 3? I can't count. 19th different winner. This was Chris Buescher in a Ford, a private Ford. It was his second win. He's only won once before, and it was 222 races and 6 years since he had his last win. So it was a wonderful night for Chris Buescher. I mean, he's always been up there, the top 10, 15 on every race he's around. He's quick, but he finally got the win after 222 races. But the big story, of course, it was this playoff cuts. It was the last of the 3 races before they dropped from 16 down to 12.
Yep.
So we've lost the 4 riders. The biggest casualty, with 2 big casualties, former champion Kyle Busch, who wears his heart very openly, and his Toyota engine blew up and was grumpy as he always is, or quite rightly too. And his Toyota had a terrible weekend. Bush's engine blew, and both Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell were in chance of winning the race when they had power steering failures. So Toyota, not a good weekend. But the other big name to go out was poor Kevin Harvick, because he caught fire last week and he had crashed the week before. So he was so low in the points, he had to win it. If you win it, you jump over all the people with more points than you. And he was on track to win. He was in the leading batch. The last pit stop, he came in, and they didn't attach the front left wheel properly, and he drove forward and the front left wheel fell off.
What a gutter. What an absolute heart-wrencher, isn't it, when that happens?
And the other two, you had 2 men. Tyler Reddick, he crashed out in his Chevy, and his teammate Austin Dillon was out on points. So we lost 4, it's down to 12, and then there's 3 more races, it'll be down to 8, 3 more races, down to 4, and then the grand finale. So
when's the grand finale? Is it anytime soon, or is it sort of going to go on?
No, we've got 7 races. We've got 3 more. 3 more will take it down to 8. Then 3 more take it down to 4, and then it's a 1 race. Best out of the 4 takes the title.
The winner takes all. So you were doing a little bit of racing down at Glory.
Yes, we were opposite ends of Britain, weren't we? While Britain was mourning the loss of our Queen, I was having a wonderful time at Goodwood. We had a lot of Queen
Revival,
ceremonies.
Glory is Goodwood, by the way. Yeah.
Well, it is still glorious. I know that's the horse racing. Is that the horse racing? They grab the glorious Goodwood. But I use it as well. I hashtag it every time I do Goodwood. The 25th running of the race. I've done all 25 weekends. And
are you the only person who's ever done all 25, Tiff?
Possibly, I don't know. But there aren't many of us that raced every weekend. And I had a Cobra in the Saturday race. It was a bit of an unsorted Mark 1 Cobra. Beaten by lots of others. We finished about 15th, but just driving around Goodwood. I mean, it's just magnificent. And then
did you have any moments?
E-Type. Always, every corner's a moment, right? We got from 14th to 8th with my owner. John Spears very kindly owns both those cars and brings me in to drive. But I was in the change room with Jimmy Johnson. I met Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy, and Scott Dixon was there, the IndyCar champion. Well, not this year, but in the past. So I met Scott and Jimmy Johnson, great guys.
Tiff, now don't take this the wrong way, because I love you so much. But did they know who you were?
Of course they did.
Yeah, I did.
Because their big mate Dario Franchitti introduced me and said, "This is Tiff Needell. You must know who he is, don't you?" I'm not sure they knew I was. But when I told them I'd done the Daytona 24-hour race with AJ Foyt and Darrell Waltrip, they were impressed with that.
Good stuff.
They've seen Top Gear. They've all seen the world's seen Top Gear.
Exactly.
So it was, and the weather, of course, was sunny. Everybody walking around in period costume, clothing. Everyone smiles on their face. Rock and roll bands. I mean, just the driver's salon was protected this year. There's a theme every year. This year it was a Egyptian. We had Tutankhamun. There was a camel lying in the sand on your way into the driver's changing room, and yeah, it's just a fantastic weekend.
If you've never been to Goodwood Revival, make sure you go next year. It is the most fun car show on the planet. It's brilliant. And the costume thing, you think when you do it for the first time, you think, oh, it's a bit awkward. But it's more awkward if you don't do it, because everybody dresses up in period costume. So it's brilliant.
Meanwhile, you were up at the top of the world at Knockhill. Going both ways around the same track, which I was a bit confused by. But I have heard this is a rumour they do that sort of thing in Scotland, and only in Scotland. So
Saturday was clockwise and Sunday was anti-clockwise. Caterham Championship, all 5 groups were there: Academy, Road Sport, 270, 310 and 420. Caterham racing is amazing. Honestly, it's got me hooked on motor racing and not just looking at Formula 1 on TV, because the races, wherever you are in the race, even if you're not sort of right at the very front, as I wasn't, there's always something going on. There's always a race going on.
Always someone to hit. Always someone to hit, Paul.
I did have a couple of little knocks I wasn't competitive on the clockwise day. I was down on power, I will say that, but that's my racing driver excuse. So I started 11th, got up to 6th, safety car came out, finished 11th, finished 10th. So it was okay, average. The next day, anti-clockwise, which was crazy. So it's quite an undulating track.
Is it a better track going the wrong way?
It's hard to overtake at the best of times at Knockhill, because it's very, very tight. I don't know how they do super bikes and had BTCC around there. But
that's going clockwise. But is it best to overtake going anti-clockwise?
No,
you come downhill into the hairpin.
You've got one chance, really. That's downhill via hairpin. And if you can brake quite late, as I'm quite good on the brakes, that's about my only thing. Starts and braking. You can protect that inside line, so it's very, very hard to overtake.
What about a world coming up Duffers Dip? That's a bit weird. Is it you have to change down to get the car to go up the hill because it's so steep?
You've got to change down to third to go around the left-hander McIntyres before you go up Duffers. And it's completely blind, so it's a very steep hill, a bit like Paddock Corner if you've been to Brands Hatch. Very steep, so you have to look at a tree on the horizon to get to understand where your line is. So it's incredible. And
what about the chicane, which they come uphill to in the main track?
Yeah, you literally, again, it's blind. And if you get it wrong, you land on the grass. A couple of guys got it wrong in front of me. One guy literally went sideways. Another guy shot my windscreen out because he landed on the grass and flicked a load of stuff up. I was following the championship leader, Jeff. We had a little breakaway, 5 of us in a little breakaway on the second race. And Jeff, who is an amazing driver, he won last year. Championship now. And he missed the gear. Coming out of the hairpin. I was a foot away from him. So I'm accelerating. He missed the gear. So my bonnet came up, or not the bonnet, on a Caterham.
Little nose.
So I'm driving around, trying to look.
Would it not fall off? Did it stay on to the end of the race?
It stayed on until the straight, and then I was worried I was going to get the black and orange flag. Would that be
good? I'm glad you passed your ARDS test.
Black and orange to call me into the pits and say you got something hanging off, but it flew off thankfully on the straight. So, but by that time I was caught up again. but I still finished sixth. And also, I had somebody got the back of me into the hairpin. But it was, those things are
unbelievable. I know. I watched your race. I followed you last year. There's so many good races. It's just a brilliant series to join in as an amateur and just enjoy the race. Was it your last round then? Are you over?
No, we're going up to Silverstone. You're actually coming to this. You haven't been to a single race this season.
I've been busy.
Sacrilege. But I do have to say, I mean, throughout the whole championship, there was brilliant. See lots of different people winning. Well, not in the 420s. Lewis won all 3 races, but in the road sport, which is where I race. On the day 2, we had a brand new winner and a brand new 3rd place. So we had James Cook, who's Mr. Consistent. He's always there. He won the race, so everybody was chuffed a bit.
This is his first win ever.
First win. He got 3rd place at Snetterton at the end of last season. So, but he's always there or thereabouts. He's sneaky fast, James. But then Mark Kendall had the drive of his life. It's one of the hardest places ever to overtake. He had a spin early, down to 21st place. He came 3rd, his first podium as well. So absolutely brilliant. I think he saw a little bit of red mist. I got a knock from him on the way through, but we won't mention that. But brilliant for those 2, and brilliant for everybody that went there. If you haven't seen Caterham racing, you need to go and watch a Caterham race, or even better, try and do some of it. Next weekend, Tiff, do you want to say what's coming up?
It's mainly bike, a lot of bike. MotoGP go to Japan to continue this amazing Ducati versus Yamaha battle. World Superbikes with Toprak and Jonathan Ray. They're down in Barcelona. That's great. The 3 names always up the front. You can go to Chile if you've got a passport. Apparently, there's some beach buggies. They're calling it the Copa Pre Extreme thing.
Copper mine.
Apparently, they're going to a mine, but apparently it's a mine that has sustainability. It's a mine that demonstrates the exact word sustainability. Well, yeah. So you can go watch that if you wanted, or I'm sure it'll be on a channel near you with 2 commentators taking it in turns to shout non-stop from the beginning to the end, including driver changes. Or not that, just not my cup. You might love that. NASCAR, the Texas Speedway, the 1.5 miles beginning, as I said, the next 3 rounds to cut the field down from 12 to 8. Whereas back home, you can either go and watch the touring cars at Silverstone, unfortunately the national circuit, which I think is a bit of a silly circuit for those cars, or Superbikes up at Alton Park. British Superbikes, again, they're coming to their knockout end-of-season system, which I'll find out after next weekend how their playoff system works. It's similar to NASCAR, but not exactly the same.
Oh, I didn't.
But have you been at Silverstone National Circuit? I was testing on it just before the E-Type, before Goodwood. We had a shakedown. So when I haven't driven around the National Circuit, I don't think, for 20 years. And the tightness of that chicane, I mean, the hairpin to come onto the straight to go back to the beginning again.
It's
horrible.
It's a shame because you miss
horrible,
out.
Horrible.
Maggots, Beckett's, the most amazing corners. And,
well, you have to brake diagonally across the road. You come out of Cops, and of course the touring cars all do track limits, so it's a nightmare for policing track limits.
I haven't told you this, have I? When I said I'm going to Silverstone for the last round of the Caterham Championships, it's on the national circuit, not back on the international, sadly. But
so
I think
you
it'd be
go
okay
through
for a Caterham.
you do track limits, then you come down, you have to brake across the road from right to left, and then you have this really tight, horrible airport. You go down the straight, and then you've got the Brooklands. He's going to be going for some time here, so we'll leave now. I'll have a chat with Tiff about the tightness of Silverstone National, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining. See you all. Cheers.
Cheers.